Let's discuss the relationship between EN 301549 and the European Accessibility Act. And we're going to use the blog post that's on the screen with me to guide the discussion. So, the way to think of this is that the European Accessibility Act is the law and EN 301549 is the technical standard. Now, obviously, both of these documents deal with accessibility, but they are different from one another in that the European Accessibility Act is telling us what we need to do, and the EN 301549 standard is telling us how to do it. But there is a catch here. EN 301549 has not been harmonized with the European Accessibility Act. Now, it's still a standard that is used in the European Union for accessibility, but it doesn't create, just because we are conformant with EN 301549, it doesn't create a presumption of conformity with the European Accessibility Act yet. What we're doing is we're waiting on version 4.1.1 to be released. It is currently in the works as of 2025, and there have already been multiple rounds of drafts that have been approved. In fact, let's go ahead and look at the status of this new version of EN 301549. So we have the latest update is that there was a stable draft with the target date of February 9th, and it was the stable draft was achieved on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2024. So they're already ahead of schedule with this, which is good because we know the compliance date for the European Accessibility Act is June 28th, 2025. So that's good. I don't think it doesn't look like, based on this target schedule, that we're going to meet that deadline. But either way, EN 301549, the technical standard, is going to be extremely helpful with helping you work through the technical requirements under the European Accessibility Act. So let's go back to the blog post, which is titled EAA versus EN 301549, What's the Difference? And we're just going back and we're going to read through a few additional sections of this. So as I said, EN 301549 is still a tremendous resource, as is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And what is no coincidence is EN 301549 incorporates WCAG 2.1 Conformance Level AA. So the one key part here that's not 100% is we're just not going to have that presumption of conformity because EN 301549 has not been harmonized with the European Accessibility Act. But regardless, it's still going to be extremely helpful. So another way, just to paint the law versus the standard in another way, let's use this loose analogy. The EAA is like the building code that requires you make your home accessible. And then the EN 301549 standard is the detailed instructions specifications that tell you exactly how wide you need to make your doorways, how tall to make the counters, etc. So the European Accessibility Act, which is also known as Directive 2019/882, and EN 31549 are both documents that are foundational to Europe's framework for digital and physical accessibility, because we know that the European Accessibility Act contemplates hardware, but they do serve different purposes. And so we've gone over those. Really, again, EN 31549 is what sets out the requirements that you need to have in place. So you need to meet these requirements by June 28th, 2025. There are a wide range of products and services included, and those include computers, smartphones, ebooks, e-commerce services, banking services, etc. And obviously, the focus is on making all of these items accessible to people with disabilities. So that underlies the European Accessibility Act, and the EN 31549 is the technical standard that's going to provide us all of the detailed specifications beyond just the requirements and the examples that are in Annex 1 and Annex 2 of the European Accessibility Act. We're going to go beyond that to where we are looking to the technical standard to understand how to implement these requirements into our products and services so that they are compliant with the EAA. And so that's what I wanted to. I've covered the rest of this blog post now. We're waiting on the updates. We have that final harmonization, but until then, you can get started. You can use EN 301549 is really it's an extremely helpful and important resource as you are working towards compliance with the European Accessibility Act. So that's the relationship here. And I'm going to include this blog post in the description because it's going to be really helpful as you are working through the technical requirements. Remember, Annex 2 has examples, which again are extremely helpful as well. We see a lot of the requirements just mirrored. A lot of Annex 1, you will see some of that language mirrored in EN 301549. So that's very, very important. The one stopping point is it hasn't been harmonized yet, so we can't be sure that if we're conformant with EN 301549 that we will be compliant with the European Accessibility Act. But we will know that we have done an excellent job, and there might just be a few additional things as far as material accessibility that we need to be concerned with. Just remember that there are also obligations. So there are obligations under the European Accessibility Act. The way to think about those is the paperwork side, the administrative side of this law or this directive. So you need to be aware of that as well, because there are other requirements besides the technical accessibility requirements. So that also comes into play. So accessible.org has numerous resources along with this channel on working towards compliance with the European Accessibility Act. Again, remember the deadline is June 28th, 2025. I will include links to more resources in the description. And if you need help with working while you're working on compliance, accessible.org offers numerous services, including audits, consulting, and training. And of course, training with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines is extremely beneficial, not only now, but in the future, so that you can make sure that you implement accessibility into your product and service creation processes, and just whenever you're making changes to your existing products or services. So training is going to be very, very important, and I will include a link to training as well in the description.